How to Be Awesome at Your Job is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/beawesome. That's linkedin.com/BEAWESOME.
People can take in complex stories, nuanced stories, but honestly, not all at once. We are good at learning things step by step, building on what we've learned. And this is one of the reasons why I've never been a fan of the phrase, explain it like I'm 5, because I'm not 5. I have the ability to understand a lot more things than a 5-year-old can. I'm not stupid, I'm just uninformed. You have to remember that that final thing that you share with somebody else is the only part of your work that anybody ever sees. So it has to represent it as well and as persuasively as it possibly can.
That's Mike Cisneros. He's an award-winning data visualization specialist who helps businesses and professionals turn complex data into effective and actionable communication. He's also the author of Storytelling with Data, Before and After, Practical Makeovers for Powerful Data Stories. So you'll learn 1, why analysis alone won't persuade, 2, the antidote for complex and overwhelming data, and 3, why not to answer everyone's questions. And if you want a quick summary write-up of the actionable takeaways Mike shared here today, I recommend you sign up for the free Gold Nugget email newsletter. You can find that over at awesomeatyourjob.com. I'm Pete Makaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Mike. Mike, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much. Great to be here.
Well, I'm excited to be speaking to an esteemed data storyteller. And we're going to hear a lot about that. But one story I got to hear right away is, what's up with you and Jeopardy?
Okay, so throughout most of my adult life, I have occasionally tried to take the Jeopardy test to see if I could get on to the program. I'm currently in the active contestant pool for Jeopardy, which means I've gone through a few different rounds of practice, of trying to get further along in the process. I've done the in-person interview with the producers, which means that me and a few hundred of my hopefully future competitors, let's say, are just waiting to get the call to see when and if we'll be invited to appear on the program. So it is exciting. It is about, I would say, a 1 in 5 shot at this point, but it's much closer. Wow. It's much closer than I've ever been to date. So keep your eyes and ears peeled.
And I'm imagining with data storytelling, you could make quite the slide revealing what your odds were at each stage along the path to now.
You would not be surprised to find out how many people are invested in tracking and analyzing the data of the games over the course of history. There are sites that track every single question, every contestant, how well they were expected to do, how fast they are on the buzzer, what they could theoretically be. It's a whole universe.
Intriguing. I did not know, but now that you mentioned it, it seems like, yeah, that feels about right. So let's hear about your book here, Storytelling with Data, Before and After, Practical Makeovers for Powerful Data Stories. What's the big idea here?
Everybody loves a makeover, right? It's fun to see when something starts from kind of a jumble and we put it into order, we organize it, we make it work in a way that is aesthetically pleasing, that is functionally pleasing. And storytelling with data is all about helping people to communicate more effectively with their data. And that oftentimes means putting it in the structure of a narrative. And so over the course of years, what we've seen is there are a lot of different challenges that different companies and people face, but they're very rarely unique to a single organization. So it's, we don't have enough time, or we don't know what level of detail to get things to, or we don't have one specific audience. We have to consider multiple different groups of people. How do we use the tools that you're teaching us about in your workshops to achieve these different goals? And that's what our book is about. We're using different case studies, 20 different case studies from our real experience with clients on how to apply these techniques that we have taught over the years to specific goals, to specific areas where you have different challenges or things that you're trying to achieve.
Okay. Well, being in the trenches like that, I'd love to get your hot take in terms of what's the median level of data storytelling ability in corporate America nowadays? Is it okay? Is it shockingly terrible? Is it excellent? Where would you put it?
What I would say is that there is a facility for data out there. People tend to know, especially people who are data analysts by trade, certainly know how to work with data. They know how to analyze it. They know how to explore it. And almost everybody knows how to tell a story. It is a natural function of being a human being. And this is how we have taken in information throughout most of recorded history. It's when you're at a barbecue, that's how you build social connections, is you're telling one another stories. And it's a very natural thing. But for whatever reason, we don't seem to be able to mesh those two things together to figure out how to take these data that we have acquired and analyzed and tell an efficient and effective story with it. I guess it's because when we were in school, nobody taught us to do these things at the same time. They always taught one thing or the other thing. You have English class and you have math class, but you never have something that combines the two of them. So to answer your question, I think that people are good at data analysis. People are good at storytelling. They're just not good at getting used to doing these things at the same time, which is a shame because you do all of this work as a data analyst to find interesting things, to find stuff that you think needs to happen in order to make not just the company more money or make a bigger benefit for your team, but to, generally speaking, make lives better. Because all of the data that we work with in some way or another, I think represents a human being, an aspect of being a human being, or something that affects a real person's life. So you don't want all of that effort, all of that enthusiasm, all of that energy, emotional investment to go for naught. You want to make sure that all that stuff that you've done, when it comes time to tell somebody who can do something about it, you want to make sure that it resonates with them, that it gets them motivated to do what you think needs to be done. And that's going to be much more likely to happen if we master these storytelling techniques and figure out how to connect with our audiences that way.
Mm-hmm. Mike, you got me fired up. Preach it. I'm totally on board with that message. And I would love it if you could make it all the more real for us with a story. I think some folks might say, well, hey, the data is the data. Those are the numbers. I show the numbers. We have a meeting about the numbers, and then we do what we do. Can you tell me what really happens when we tell a disappointing to mediocre data story versus an outstanding data story? What really is possible when we do that makeover, that transformation?
When we classify something as a mediocre data story, a lot of times what we are saying is we assume that the data is going to tell the story for us. And this is natural because when you are an analyst and you are working with this data all the time, it makes perfect sense to you. And the more you work with it, the more you feel like it's super obvious. And you imagine that you're going to show it to somebody else. You go, here, see? And they're going to just be wowed by exactly the same things you were wowed by. But they've never seen this before. And they honestly don't care about it nearly as much as you do. They have lots of other things they care about. This is just the way that organizations work, is that if you don't have the authority to do something, you're probably moving up the organization to get the authority or pass it on to somebody who has the authority to do something, and they don't have the time. So you have to make it matter to them in this way. And this is something I wish I had known when I was a younger data analyst, by the way, because most of us don't get into this field because we love talking to people. Most of us get into this field because we like the cold comfort of numbers and of objective analysis. But it is that figuring out how to communicate effectively with people that's going to make the difference. So I had an example that it was for an organization where they were doing investment in a country. They were doing development loans and that sort of thing. And they had run some models on here's how much we think the imports are going to be. Here's how much we think the exports are going to be over the course of the next few years. And by few, I mean like 15 years. And then something unexpected happened. There was regime change in the country. So they had to redo all of their models. They redid all of their models, and then they delivered their projections on a single slide. And it looked like they had gone into their statistics tool and had just regenerated the charts, and there were dozens of lines, and they were all overlapping one another. and the names of the
Oh,
models.
like the before versus after, all the stuff.
It very much was like a before versus after. But to our eyes, this is the before. This is, you've done so much work. You've figured out what it is that we need to do. We figured out that even with the regime change, we figured out there are ways that we can see, oh, here's how they can drive up exports. Here's how they can drive up imports. Here's how we could invest. But it wasn't clear in the way that they were showing it. So instead of just putting the data out there and saying, here's what we think is going to happen, you have to say, okay, let's walk you through step by step. Here's what we thought was going to happen. And you show sort of one thing at a time and walk people through it. Here's the range of what we think could happen. Now, here's one specific thing. Like, if this happens, our model believes X. And so we have the opportunity to invest in this because this will make something else improve. People can take in complex stories, nuanced stories, but honestly, not all at once. We are good at learning things step by step, building on what we've learned. And this is one of the reasons why I've never been a fan of the phrase, explain it like I'm 5, because I'm not 5. I have the ability to understand a lot more things than a 5-year-old can. I'm not stupid. I'm just uninformed. I can understand a lot if you just let me know how to do this piece by piece. So one of the things that we encourage people to do in this kind of transformation is make sure that those key points, if there are a lot of points you want to make, don't do it all at once because it's overwhelming to people. Graphs aren't poetry. You don't have to say the most with the least amount of words or the least amount of pixels or ink on the screen. Imagine the meetings that you have been in where somebody comes in and they're very proud of what they've done and they put a slide up on the screen and the same slide stays on the screen for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and they're talking you through it, but none of it changes. And when it first came up on the screen, it was so overwhelming. You thought, I don't know what to make of this. I don't even know what I'm looking at. And you tune out right away. And then you're forced to stare at the same thing for the next 10 minutes and it's death. But if you instead were the person who is going to present the same information, you can reveal it piece by piece. Give somebody an idea of what the context was. Give somebody a baseline. Add things to it step by step by step. And so by the end, you can have that same complicated view, but people understand it because you built it for them piece by piece.
Very good. This brings me back to my Bain days. We used to say 1 slide, 1 point was a mantra that was mostly followed with some exceptions. Is that something that you agree with?
I think in principle, yes. It's also kind of 1 graph, 1 slide, if possible, especially if you are presenting live. Now, we all live in a world of constraints where sometimes you have to listen to what you're being told and they say, this is going to be part of a bigger presentation. You're only going to get 2 slides. So figure out what to put on it. And most folks just jam as much information as they can all at once. Lots of words, 6-point font, because they have to get all the details in, all the caveats. And I got to tell you, the older I get, the higher my minimum point size is for acceptable fonts.
Oh, yeah.
I used to design much, much smaller type. And now I think, all right, 14 points. If you're going to present it up on a screen, 14 points or higher, please, because I cannot read that, especially from the back of the room. Generally speaking, yes, you want to minimize what you are asking people to look at in a live setting because you want them to listen to you. And guess what? People cannot read and listen at the same time. It uses the same part of your brain. It's that verbal part of your brain, verbal processing, which is why I try not to put tables up in front of people when I'm in a workshop or when I'm in a meeting, because everybody starts reading the table and doing math at you and trying to fact check you. And you might be saying to them, literally, here's what I want you to look at. And they are not listening to you because they're trying to figure out what to look at. So yes, making sure that if you're presenting live, making sure that you are the thing that is the presentation and the slides are just there to support you. This isn't the case if you're going to send something around where you have to have a lot of words on the screen, but that's where the difference comes in, of making sure you have a story that you can write down in words and be present on the slide that you're sending out to everybody, or the takeaway, the memo, whatever it is that your organization does, so that it is clear and there's no room for misinterpretation as to what you want people to take away from this and what you want people to do with this. Because if you don't want people to do anything with what you're sharing with them, honestly, why are you sharing it in the first place?
Yes, well said. Okay. Well, so now we talk about a story and data for folks who aren't even sort of fundamentally, principally grasping what is a data story. Can you maybe give us an example of what that might sound like in terms of, hey, we have a narrative and then we have some data that fits in there?
Sure, I can give you an example of data versus a data story. Data is we have some call center data. We keep track of when calls come in. We keep track of how many we get on any given day. And we can look through this on a daily basis, on an average across days, on a days of the week sort of basis. And sometimes there are days where there are more calls. Sometimes there are days there are less. Sometimes there's times when we see atypical numbers of calls. I can put a graph in front of somebody that shows a day where those numbers of calls were just unusual. There was a lot in some minutes, there was zero in other minutes, and it would just look confusing. But, that's probably bad data. Or you could tell the data story of what we are normally expecting is to see this this bimodal distribution over the course of a day. We see peaks in the morning on the East Coast. We see a little peak around lunchtime on the West Coast. On this one particular day, we saw these weird drop-offs where it went to zero, and then it spiked all the way up to like 3 times as many calls. And then it dropped to zero, and then it spiked up again. And this happened 3 times over the course of an hour. Why did this happen? Well, we didn't know at first because the people who worked in the call center didn't report anything was unusual. We only found this by looking at call logs later on. And it turns out that an engineer who we spoke to had the answer, said that there was call tracking software that had crashed and rebooted 3 different times during that hour. So what had happened was that each one of those calls wasn't being tracked for a certain period of time. And when the software came back on, it said, every active call, it starts right now. And so it went 0, 0, a bunch of calls. And then it went 0, 0, a bunch of calls. What this tells us is that we do need to address a problem that didn't seem to be a problem in the data because this system failed. And even though it failed gracefully this time, it doesn't mean it won't fail catastrophically the next time. So what we need to do is investigate why this happened and what we can do to mitigate this problem in the future.
It's funny. I mean, in a way, call center volumes might be among the most boring things around. And yet, when you put it in this format, it's like a mystery. Like, ooh, what happened? Let's find out. Let's see. Oh. And then catastrophic, I mean, it could be in terms of who knows what that software is attached to and what that's going to mean for people. So I really appreciate that example in terms of night and day, with the first one being, hey, here's some funky call numbers. How about that?
Yeah.
As opposed to taking us through the step-by-step sequence narrative of, oh, we've got a mystery. Oh, and here's what's going on. And here's the implication of that.
And moreover, who are you talking to? Who are you telling this story to? If you're telling the story to the person who's in charge of customer service, then they're going to care that there's a chance that they're going to have an outage for hours and hours where their customers aren't going to be able to get involved or able to get service at all. So they're going to want to do something about it. So you deliver this information in a way that's going to mean something to them and motivate them to take action. Whereas instead, if you just looked at the data and didn't bother to talk to anybody else about it, you might say, well, this data is clearly wrong. I mean, I was in the call center.
Just ignore it, move on.
Yeah, everything said fine. It was just a fluke. Like, leave it out of the report. Just leave that day out of the weekly report. We'll average the other days and it'll be fine.
That's good. Thank you. Well, Mike, could you share with us the most common and destructive mistakes you see and give us the better way?
So the common mistake I see is when people come to us and they learn how to improve their communications, how to clean up their graphs, use color differently, think about their audience, all of the things that we teach them to do. The most common mistake is folks try and change everything all at once and try and do everything in every communication that they ever build. And that is counterproductive because you do not have time to do this. All of the things that are going to improve communication, they do take time. Now, the more you do them, the more you get practiced at them, the less time they do take. But cleaning up a graph takes a little bit of time. So if you're just firing up something to send out to your colleagues really quickly, don't bother making it look as pretty as you possibly can. But if you're going to be presenting something to the C-suite, then yes, absolutely. Hopefully you've practiced and done this a few times before so that when it comes time for that big high stakes communication, you're ready to do it. But you can't spend all of your time doing this. I would just ask that people spend a little bit more time than they tend to doing these things, thinking about what your audience is going to see versus what you are used to seeing. Because people do this, they spend almost all of their time exploring their data, and then it comes time to share it with somebody else, and they've run out of time. Because, like you said, it's a mystery. We're trying to figure out what happened. We are curious people. That's natural. But you have to remember that that final thing that you share with somebody else is the only part of your work that anybody ever sees. So it has to represent it as well and as persuasively as it possibly can. So take a little bit of time to make it better, but you don't always have to do everything every time. And the consequential mistake, the most damaging thing that folks can do is in their enthusiasm to change the way their organization communicates is to take away the things that other people are used to seeing. Because that is the best way to get things to not be adopted. Hey, what happened to the weekly report I used to see? Why does it look different? I don't like this because it's different.
Mm-hmm.
It might be objectively better, but it is not familiar. And there's a much higher hurdle to overcome that unfamiliarity than we think there is. So when you're trying to change, this is a change management thing, of course, is you want to make sure that you are trying out new techniques, maybe on lower stakes things, with people who are already on board with the idea of doing something new, on projects that are one-offs rather than things that everybody in the organization is used to seeing, or maybe just augment what you're used to doing with new things rather than replacing what people have come to rely on. And I'll be honest, most of the things that people have come to rely on, we don't need. They're just safety blankets. Do you need all of these tables of data in your weekly reports and your monthly reports? Do people look at them? No, they don't. They just want to know that they can if it comes time to be questioned on them. So that's what I would say is make sure that you are being conscious of other people's need to have what they are familiar with and adding new things rather than taking away what everybody is used to.
Well, now this reminds me again, I'm thinking about Bain times with the appendix. It's like all the stuff is in the appendix. So is that an appropriate tactical approach you like, or are there others in terms of, I am giving you the familiar thing you've come to expect, and I'm also doing it better?
I like an appendix. I can send you this data separately. We can talk about these details offline. I'm also a huge proponent of having your actual presentation be shorter with a few backup slides ready to go, because I hate pre-answering everybody's possible question.
Oh, yeah.
If you imagine you're in a room with 20 people and somebody has a question, well, now you know that 5% of the people in the room have that question. So, okay, fine. You can answer that question. If you have pre-answered it, 95% of the people didn't care and they are sitting through something they're not interested in. But when somebody asks a question and you say, oh, we looked at that, I actually do have a slide I can address that with, and you bring it up, it looks like a magic trick. And people assume that any question that gets asked, like you're going to be Johnny on the spot, ready to show them another slide. And if you can't, you just say, we did look at that. I don't have the slide with me, but I can talk with you about that after the fact. And what happens is you get shorter, focused presentations. Everybody's happier. Everybody thinks you're a genius. And honestly, it's no different than what you would normally do. It's just people aren't bored. They're excited, especially because the presentation is shorter and everybody likes that.
Yeah, you're right. I like that a lot. It's win-win. So it's shorter meetings if no one asks. And if they do ask, you look even more awesome than if you just anticipated it in advance.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I guess I'd also love to get your take on, so if there's your book, of course, but what are some top resources that you might recommend for where can we behold? Because I think many of us maybe have never seen a masterful data story ever presented in their life, unfortunately. So where might you point people to where I can look at examples of, oh, okay, that's an amazing data story. I think I get the memo in terms of what Mike is talking about versus the stuff I'm seeing at work every day.
One of the places that I learned to hone my own skills in data visualization was, believe it or not, the software product Tableau has a public facing aspect to it where people can do data analysis on their own data. And for a while, and I think still to this very day, people create their own data stories using this ostensibly dashboarding tool, this BI tool, but you can wrestle it into being able to tell essentially any kind of story you want to do it if you put in the time and the effort and the creativity to do it. So that's where I learned more about how to investigate things, how to present them to an audience in a way that is more narrative, more story-like. And that is Tableau Public is what it has always been called. But as far as a professional organization, more in the data journalism space, the website called The Pudding is really good at this. And their URL is pudding.cool. And they do an excellent job of investigating more, not just pop culture, but socially relevant stories that are data related. And they have great narratives that they can deliver in this scrolling web format or interactive web format. So you can see not just the story that they have curated for you, but oftentimes you're able to investigate and play with the data and see how does this relate to you specifically. And I've always been a fan of their work.
That's cool. One of my favorite resources in terms of, I've just found myself randomly looking at slide deck after slide deck, which doesn't happen that often in terms of these are riveting and I want more.
Yep.
It was the venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, and we'll link all these in the show notes, their SlideShare. They had all these decks in which they were, well, now they're so old, I'm pulling it up right now, but the principles still apply in terms of we've got a headline, we've got a clear data, a picture that connects to that headline. And then we go, oh, okay. And then one connects to the next, connects to the next. And I thought that was excellent. Do you know of any others in the businessy realm?
The unfortunate answer is I don't, because I don't think the organizations that do that or that are focusing on that are putting a lot of them out. Like, because like you said, like you're looking at pitch decks, for instance. That's just not my world. Like I'm not really looking at that for pleasure anymore. So my answer is I don't have a resource for you there.
Okie dokie. Well, can you tell us any top things we should do or not do as we venture into this world of improving our data storytelling?
One of the most important things you can do as a storyteller in all facets of storytelling is to practice. Is every time you're going to give a presentation and you've got your materials, maybe you've got them updated and cleaned up and optimized the way that you want to optimize them, don't assume that on the day, you are going to know what you are going to say in front of an audience just because you have put the slides together for them. You never want the first time you say the words you're presenting to people to be in front of those people. So taking that time to practice. And I believe that people are more comfortable practicing out loud than they used to be because we do a lot more talking to our computers and our webcams than we used to, 5-10 years ago. But it still requires you to practice if you want to get comfortable at what you're doing. And this, I'm speaking to my fellow introverts out there. This is what makes you more comfortable, is practicing. I don't believe that being introverted means that you are shy and that you don't want to speak in front of people. I believe it means you like to be in control of the situation. And what better way to be in control and confident in the situation than to practice it so that you have been there before? So practice what you're going to say. Think about it. Think about it even without your slides. Because what if, the projector doesn't work today and you have to give your presentation anyway? If you have practiced without your slides, you will be able to do that. And by the way, that's always a good idea, practicing without your slides. It forces you to remember what it is that's going to come next. It lets you free up part of your mind to actually look at your audience while you're talking and get a sense of, are they tracking with you? Do they seem like they need you to speed up? Do they seem like they need you to slow down? This is an excellent way to improve your data storytelling.
Okay. And I got to ask, what about AI?
What about AI? It's the question on everybody's mind all of the time. I think we get caught up a lot on algorithms and on LLMs. You never want to forget that the point of what we're doing is making people's lives better. So algorithms, LLMs, AI, that all is going to help us think through what needs to be said. But ultimately, what's going to happen is a human being is going to have to convince another human being to do something. I don't think the best LLM in the world can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like somebody still has to actually physically do the things that are going to take place in our physical world. And that's what all of our decisions kind of boil down to, is what's going to happen in our world. And nowadays, think about how we're already starting to realize that there is a version of fingerprinting that you can do for, oh, this was written by an AI model. That's the whole, there's a lot of M dashes in here. Did you write this? Or like the tone and the style is very much starting to be recognizable. You don't want your work to be pointed out as, oh, that's not yours. You just let the AI do that. Because you are always going to be blamed or celebrated for whatever you show to people. And you're not going to have the opportunity to say, oh, was I wrong? Oh, that was the tool. The tool did that. You can still use the tools, but you also have to vet the tools. And then you have to bring in the other context that, let's be honest, none of our tools are ever going to have all of the context we need to put together the most effective communication for another person that we need to. So they're good adjuncts, but they're not replacements for what we need to do in order to communicate.
And to that point of them being good adjuncts, are there any best and worst practices you've seen with regard to their use when it comes to slides and presentations?
I think they're good now for helping you to think through different ways of saying what you want to say. Or I have something I want to say, I need to say it more succinctly. Maybe show me different ways of visualizing this data set. Show this to me as a bar or a line or a dot plot or different ways. And maybe that will help you to iterate more rapidly. And that's always good. It's always good to do that kind of iteration in the early stages of your process. But at the end stages of your process, it honestly has to be you and your expertise and your confidence and your knowledge of your audience that makes those final decisions.
Okay, Mike, anything else you want to make sure to mention before we hear about some of your favorite things?
One thing that I wanted to mention, following up with this, because it's authenticity that I think people are going to value. I mean, they're always valuing authenticity, but I think that's going to become even more valuable in the future. And I was at a conference a few months ago where this topic came up, and the moderator was asking these people, I was literally on a panel about AI adoption, and they were asking them, what makes you likely to trust a visualization or a report or a news story? And 2 out of the 3 people said, if I'm familiar with the creator's body of work, that's what's going to make me feel like I trust it. And the other person said, if I can see and verify the sources and methods used by the creator, that's what makes me trust that work. So if people can tell that the work is not authentically 100% you, why are people going to trust, the machine over you, the credible human? So that's why I think we need to practice being compelling and meaningful and creating those engaging communications in that authentic manner to build up the credibility. It's very hard to gain, but it is very easy to lose. And if you have that, then your voice and your reputation will end up being the most persuasive one in the room.
Big thanks to Mike for sharing his wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsored checkout is Strawberry.me Career Coaching. Having real clarity and direction can make or break your career. If it seems like you're putting in the work but not seeing your career take off, some coaching might be just the ticket. Strawberry.me matches you with certified career coaches who help you gain clarity on what you really want next in your career, develop a results-driven strategy, and stay accountable. And they can also help you flourish beyond career issues. I had a fantastic session with my coach, Brett, about handling stress from so many responsibilities in so many areas. He was fun. He was wise. He just really got me. We had some laughs and a good time and a good rapport. And he gave me an exercise that has been so quick and so effective for me. I've been doing it every day. So if you're ready to take control and build momentum in your career, go to strawberry.me/awesome to claim your $50 credit. That's strawberry.me/awesome. Because awesome careers don't just happen, you make them happen.
One sponsored checkout is Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. While Square started as just a little white credit card reader, now it's powering all sorts of things behind the scenes. If I were to start a local acoustic shop to help my neighborhood enjoy some more quiet in their homes, I'd use Square to take payments for massively heavy sound blocking doors, custom art, echo-absorbing sound panels, and all the little things people never knew they needed for extra quiet, like door seals and green glue and outlet gaskets. Square would help me have all my customer info ready for running really cool, fun promotions that arrive at just the right time. Square helps local businesses simplify the epic complexity that comes with running that business. Square helps with all sorts of things, from expanding to new locations, building a loyal following, or providing a bridge if there's a cash flow gap. Go to square.com/go/awesome to learn more. That's square.com/go/awesome. Square. Meet you there. One sponsored checkout is Quince. That nip in the air means two things. One, decorative gourd season is approaching. And two, it's time to check inventory on fall staples and fill in any gaps. And Quince can help with that masterfully, as they have all kinds of goodies you'll wear nonstop, such as a super soft 100% Mongolian cashmere sweater starting at $60. But that low price does not mean low quality. I've been loving my Quince beanie during these cooler temperatures. I treated that hat rough, but it keeps bouncing back and holding up like a champ. And Quince has really emerged as something of a go-to across the board. I keep seeing bags my wife orders from Quince appearing at our doorstep. So keep it classic and cool this fall with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/awesome for free shipping on your order and 365 days returns. That's QUINCE.com/awesome for free shipping and 365-day returns. One more time, quince.com/awesome. Beautiful. Well, now could you share a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
So I always liked this quote from Peter Shilton, who was a goalkeeper for the England national team several years ago. Said, as a goalkeeper, you need to be good at organizing the people in front of you and motivating them. You need to be able to see what's going on and react to the threats, just like a good manager in business.
All right. And a favorite study or experiment or piece of research?
There was a study from Michigan in 2008 it's in the Psychological Science Journal, I believe, that says if it's hard to read, it's hard to do. So always show things to people in a way that is easy for them to consume, because otherwise they'll think that whatever you're asking them to do is going to be more difficult than it actually is.
And a favorite book?
For business, my favorite book is Factfulness by Hans Rosling, which is about how things are actually not as terrible as folks would have you believe in the world. Fiction-wise, I really enjoyed Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin.
Okay. And favorite tool, something you use to be awesome at your job?
My favorite tool, believe it or not, is my bullet journal. It is something that has helped me to stay organized, because we are always doing so many different things at once. It was the only way I could keep everything straight. And I still am a proponent of tactile, physical ways of staying organized. I have a big whiteboard up on my wall in my home office. That is my calendar of ground truth. Believe it or not, it's my whiteboard on the wall. So,
okay. And is there a key nugget you share that really connects and resonates with folks? You hear them quote it back to you often.
The goal isn't to make your slides look better. It is to make them work better.
And if folks want to learn more, get in touch, where would you point them?
So my co-authors and I, that's Cole Nussbaumer-Knaflic, who founded and wrote the original Storytelling with Data book, Alex Velez. We all work for the same company called Storytelling with Data, which is at storytellingwithdata.com. You can find Before and After, which is our new book, and all the other books there. If you want to find me, I am Mike Cisneros. That's Mike Vizneros on all of the socials. Because in the data visualization world, using Viz in your handle was the height of fashion in the mid-2000s.
And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Well, aside from the obvious, which is that you should absolutely read Before and After, you had a guest on recently, Ruth Milligan, and it was a fabulous episode on speaking in public. So my challenge to everybody is along those lines, which is to speak in public in a low stakes way, in a professional way, whatever it is, especially if you are a self-proclaimed introvert, because this will get you more comfortable at communicating, which is going to be the key to unlocking more success and being more awesome in your job.
All right, Mike, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
The thing that's really stuck with me from Mike is that perspective that if it's hard to read, it's hard to do. And that is just So true of my experience of things. We get a visual cue. Maybe you're looking at a big mess on a slide or in real life 3-dimensional clutter in your world. It's like, oh my gosh, that seems like it's a hard, big thing. And then it may or may not be, but we make that assumption and then we make decisions about what we're going to pursue and not pursue. So if you want someone to go ahead and do the thing you are suggesting with your data story and your analysis, we want to make that look easy, beautiful, clean, and smooth to read. And then we will naturally, potentially, start making some assumptions like, oh, that doesn't seem like such a hard thing to go do. Why don't we go ahead and do it? An easy and overlook boost to our persuasion power. Great stuff from Mike. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we referenced, please drop on by awesomeatyourjob.com/EP1091. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
I've got 20 minutes till Run Club meets, and it's time for a quick pre-workout snack. Go Squeeze Active Fruit Blend to the rescue. Made with select B vitamins to help release energy, it's an easy, squeezable pouch made to move with me. The taste? So good. And made with real fruit. Even better. Whether I'm hitting the trail or meeting my friends on the court, this is my go-to on-the-go snack. Quick, easy, ready when I am. When it's go time, I go with Go Squeeze Active. Snag yours on your next store run. Search for Go Squeeze on Amazon.